You in this battle, man, I'll soon be dead. I'll glue your face to my dick so I can fuck with your head. I got metaphors coming through my pores. You probably never been in a battle before, so I hope you realize your mistake. There ain't no party, got some candles, this will be a piece of cake.
Folks, welcome to the Before Hours podcast, an internet radio phenomenon hosted by an occasional morning person. I ask the most interesting people I know about their sleep, routine, life, love, stress, and setbacks. If you want to talk to us, you can do so. Write to us at the beforehourspodcast@gmail.com. You could also slide into my DMs on Instagram at Bobby Sheehan LOL. But for now, good friend, comedian, and our next guest. Welcome, Boris Khaykin. How are you doing, Boris?
Oh, I'm doing good. How
Did
are
I
you,
say
Bobby?
your last name correctly?
No, you didn't. But you know what? You said it the least, not the worst way possible, you know?
Introduce yourself to the listeners.
Boris Khaykin. But you never, that's right. It starts with a silent K.
Whoa.
I know. But you didn't say Boris Khaykin, which is what happens growing up a lot. And then they stop themselves after they say the kike part and then be like, wait, how do I? I'm like, you already said the bad part.
They're like, I thought your last name was Smith.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, well, thank you for being on the podcast. We have known each other for years, so I probably should have learned your last name, but that's okay.
You know what? It's very common. It's a theme throughout my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I have my last name repeatedly mispronounced as Sheeran, which has only been happening in the since a very ugly famous man.
You also used to wear your hair longer and cut it short since then, just because.
Yeah, that's true.
It's causing problems.
Yeah, but this is just me thinking out loud, dude. How are you?
I'm good.
You were on an airplane recently.
I was in Asheville, North Carolina. Did a couple shows there. Took the wife and baby
Oh my God.
on the road,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good time. Yeah, it was my wife's good friend moved out there, so it was kind of an ideal situation to try to bring my wife and toddler
Hell yeah.
to a headlining weekend. We stayed at my wife's friend's place. She had a neighbor who had a 17-year-old who babysat so that they could all come out to the show, to one of the shows. It's great.
Hell yeah, dude. You were one of those guys that does comedy and then had a baby and then didn't quit.
Yeah.
I could think of a handful of folks like that. And you're one of them.
It's I don't know if it's something to be proud of or it's prideful in the world of comedy and maybe shameful in the world of
is begging me to stop.
Yeah. No, obviously she's very supportive if she's willing to fly to another state with our baby to do that.
And Asheville, dude, is it like it's the cool place in the South, is my
It's
understanding.
pretty hip. It's true. They got a nice little mini Brooklyn going on in the middle of an otherwise different state.
Hell yeah.
But every city's got one now.
Oh, okay.
Every state in the South has their own little Brooklyn that's like a little more nutty than Brooklyn, usually because they're responding to the other nuttiness around them that's very conservative.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
So, yeah, it's fun. There's a good portion of blue hair throughout the southern cities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Dude, well, I don't know. I live in Bushwick, Brooklyn now, which is like you described. It's
it's the Brooklyn of Brooklyn.
It's the Brooklyn of Brooklyn. And it's very like, I was in a coffee shop this morning actually, and I felt everyone being like, what's up with this guy? You know what I mean? Like I was a little too hyper masculine for the comedy shop, for the comedy shop. This was a Freudian slip. For the coffee shop that I was in.
Which is saying something, because you're not, no offense.
Dude, I'm
but
gay
you're not
everywhere
particularly
else.
You're not feminine either.
Yeah.
But we're on like similar, we're both like small dudes. You're not like a guy who walks into a coffee shop and people are like, is he going to start trouble around
Right,
here?
yeah. But they just feel the cis on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a joke about a Brooklyn coffee shop because there's a real, in my neighborhood, they had one that says our regular milk is oat milk.
Uh-huh.
So I have a joke about ordering my coffee with cis milk.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's one of those places where everybody that works there seems annoyed that I'm patronizing their business.
Yeah.
Which I think is a weird vibe.
Yeah, that's sort of just an employees of a coffee shop thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they hate capitalism. So...
But they have to participate in it.
Yeah, I know. It's doesn't pull the rug out from under anything.
So I grew up in the punk rock scene, I guess, like in high school. In high school, I didn't play sports or participate in any extracurricular activities besides smoking weed and going to punk rock shows.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of like these punk kids that refused to like go to college or even get like a part-time job at a supermarket because like fuck the system, man. And then I found out later their dad is like a lawyer or something.
Right. You have to be able to do that. You have to be able to disconnect.
It's just so funny. They're like, yeah, I'm sort of outside the mainstream, but like my dad like helps me out, but like fuck him. He's like working for the man, but I'm not working for the man.
Yeah.
I'm getting money from a guy that's working for the man.
Well, you know, Marx did it too. So
That's true. He was he a Nepo baby?
a little bit. He was living off of, was it Engels? Whoever he was like studying with or whatever. Yeah. He was living off of like published works from that guy.
And I also hear that he was a deadbeat father.
Marx?
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I don't know how he is as a father, but I went on a date with a girl in college who was the like great granddaughter of Karl Marx, and her last name was Marx, but I did not put two and two together. Obviously, why would I expect that?
Right.
And then she like asked me, "Oh, so what's your background?" I'm like, "Well, we left the Soviet Union." She's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Well, you know, not to get overly complicated, but the country was ruined by a certain economic system." And she's like, "Oh, that's my great grandfather."
So she's like, it's not that bad, and you're trying to fuck her. So you're like, yeah, I guess. You know?
I'm a communist now.
I went on a date with a girl from Kazakhstan.
Which is how a lot of people become communists, by the way.
Really? Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Not necessarily for getting pussy, but for staying alive.
Oh, I meant for getting pussy.
Oh, really?
It's also how a lot of people become capitalists. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. A lot of people. I almost said majority, and that's not fair, but a lot of people belong to an ideology that is convenient for where their body currently is.
Yeah, it's a geographic thing for sure.
Yeah. Not me. I'm in Bushwick being hypermasculine. You know what I mean?
Baby.
Just
dominate that coffee shop.
Have you seen the posters around that says like, "Are you a communist? Get organized?" And it's a literal picture of Karl Marx.
No, I have not seen those.
They're all over Brooklyn, and what's funny is like they've been getting teared down because in Brooklyn there is a big.
Because he was kidnapped by Hamas.
Yeah, a little known fact is Marx is still alive, and he's
in a tunnel underneath the El Shifa Hospital.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny. That was that made me laugh. I was talking to a comic who, because we were referencing, I mean, for people that don't know, in New York City, it's funny. New York seems to be like the ideological battleground of like anything that's happening. You know what I mean?
New York or maybe San Francisco a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like as soon as like the October 7th attack happened, there was like the like posters of Israeli hostages sort of like spreading awareness that like actual people are involved in this, and it's not just like the big bad Israeli government, which is what some people think. You know what I mean? And in response, like I would say for the most part, very far left Brooklynites or Manhattanites are like tearing down the posters, which you gotta. I think at that point, when you're tearing down a picture of like a mother and a child, you have to be like, I know I'm real charged up about something, but am I on the right side here? You know what I mean? Am I the baddie?
We said we wouldn't get into politics, but I will say, because I have friends I discuss this stuff with a lot, and I try to give the most benefit of the doubt. And I do think if you're a person that's didn't learn about this yesterday, but has been like passionately advocating on a particular side for a long time, I could see how someone might frame that as political propaganda because it's. None of those hostages are here. So you're not really advocating for someone. It's not like putting a missing dog poster up in terms of like someone can practically do something about it. Like you said, it's to raise awareness. I could see the argument for like, you know, this is to them propaganda for a particular war movement or whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh, what a tremendous amount of empathy.
I try to go with it. Honestly, just because I have, between Brooklyn and Jersey, I get both sides of the spectrum all the time. And I kind of like it. I like mediating a little bit like that and trying to find that kind of stuff.
So we should, for people unaware, because you referenced that you grew up in the Soviet Union?
I did.
Okay. So.
Well, I was 7 when I came here. So in what is now Ukraine, but at the time was the soon to be collapsing Soviet Union.
Yeah. And so your parents are Ukrainian Jews.
Yeah. So that's the caveat sort of that you need, because when you live, like all your paperwork said Jew. That's kind of why we were able to come to leave is not to get into a ton of history, but funny enough, what enabled Jews to leave the Soviet Union was a negotiation that I think started with the formation of Israel. That was basically, you can let them leave now if you don't want them there, type of thing. And then we obviously didn't go to Israel; we came to America. But in all of the Soviet Union, you were very much like geographically oriented with your ethnicity, and if you were Jewish, no matter where you were, it said Jew on your paperwork. And so there were limits on like how many Jews could go to university and how many Jews could be in like particular places and things like that.
Jesus Christ, you're having people on their government paperwork, it says Jew on it, and this is in the aftermath.
I still have paperwork that says Jew on it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the stuff that was translated here. Yeah.
Oh, that's why. I mean, this is in the aftermath of the Holocaust. You still have, there's still, the Soviet Union is like, we should say on people's government papers that they're Jewish. That's wild to me.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to your morning routine soon. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, there's Soviet Union's got its own complicated history in terms of treatment of Jews and also Jewish involvement in various aspects of politics there. I mean, I could teach a class I'm wholly unqualified for.
Oh, I'm sure folks are doing that right now.
Oh yeah.
So you're okay. So you're very young, and your parents are like, we should leave Ukraine, which is still part of the Soviet Union.
Well, it was a time when you were starting to be able to leave. So there were different waves of migration, but it wasn't like that easy to leave. And then at a certain point late into Gorbachev's term, he started what they call like perestroika, which is basically where they like started loosening certain laws. When I went to school there, we had pictures of Lenin, and you called him Grandpa Lenin, and you in public wouldn't normally like speak badly of anything to do with that stuff. And my parents remind me of this, that I went to my dad's work at one point. My dad worked at a TV studio in Odessa where we lived. And it's, if you work anywhere, you work for the government. Like that's the way you quit, the way we left is they quit their jobs, which is becoming a defector. When you quit your job, that's you leaving the system essentially, because you work for the government. So at the time, I'd overheard something that my parents said privately, and they were putting up another portrait of Lenin, or maybe it was somebody else that I'd recognized. And I was like, repeated whatever I'd heard at home, where I was like, oh, why do they got this asshole's whatever up? And it was enough of an environment by then where that person took me and brought me to my dad and kind of like flagged to him what I'm doing, rather than an earlier time period where it probably would have been very, very bad for my dad.
Holy shit. That's wild.
Yeah.
Damn. And so if you had said that maybe a few years earlier,
5 years earlier. Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. And to hear stories like that. And this is like in the early 90s. When did this happen?
This is late 80s.
Late 80s. Yeah. To think that there's a place where you were like, yeah, if your kids repeat something you said bad about fucking.
Well, that was a big, that was how they accomplished a lot of it. It was a lot of kids turning their parents in. That's how a lot of cultural revolutions function, as you get to the kids ideologically.
Damn, that is wild. Okay, so you left. I'm curious why, I don't know if you know the answer, why you guys came to the US instead of Israel.
Well, I can tell you the answer. So one of the top reasons, first of all, that my parents wanted me out of there is they did not want me to be obligated to fight in the military for a country that I might not align with in whatever way. And so there was mandatory military service in the Soviet Union at the time, and there still is mandatory military service in Israel, and pros and cons of it, whatever. But we're not a fighting people in that sort of way, generally speaking.
Okay.
And so they actually, so 89 was when the wall fell, and that was when it was a little bit easier to leave. But there were still like particular migration laws, chain migration is what they called it at the time, where like depending on your like chain of relatives, certain degrees of closeness justified coming over to join them in that country. And so we were going to move to America, and Frank Lautenberg, I know this specifically because I remember my parents cursing his name, changed something in the migration law where we were no longer able to come to America. And so we were going to move to Israel in around 1989, late 1989, and my mom became pregnant with my younger brother. My grandma was a pediatric doctor in Russia, in Ukraine, and bad one to mix up now. And so my mom decided to stay and have my brother there because she felt comfortable. She knew my grandma would be there and all that.
Mhm.
And during the time that she had my brother, they were able to work out a way through like my grandma remarried and his other daughter was in America and they came over. And so through that, they were able to like fill out the paperwork properly and be able to gain entry into America.
I see.
So we were very close to moving to Israel because there just weren't that many other options and their priority was getting out of Ukraine while you still could.
Yeah. Interesting. The Freudian slip you had where you said Russia instead of Ukraine. Yeah, someone's going to clip that and go, see?
Well, you know what? That's the other thing that people don't realize is my whole time growing up, first of all, I speak Russian, which a lot of Ukrainians, if you weren't in particular regions, because first of all, it was intentionally Russified. But also like when it was the Soviet Union, people were shipped all over the place. So you could have gone to college in one place, but you'd be assigned to work elsewhere, or you could go to college in Moscow, even though you grew up in Odessa. And like, it was just a lot of like the government moving you where they were centrally planned. They decided that you should be moved to. So you sort of like ended up speaking Russian and then they removed a lot of the Ukrainian language and culture. And as we were leaving, they were voting on whether to like teach Ukrainian in schools and stuff like that. And I think my parents, like, they didn't really give a shit. They were just like, yeah, sure, do it. You know what I mean? Now that we're out of here. I can like understand Ukrainian roughly, but it's like maybe a little bit closer than Spanish and Portuguese. I think a little bit closer than the two. Yeah.
In terms of similarity.
Yeah. But my whole life growing up here, most people didn't know Ukraine and they'd be like Russian. And I'd be like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it didn't matter. You know, that's the other part of like how this war ended up happening is it wasn't just Putin, but a lot of people sort of underestimated the national identity that sort of reformed in the past 20 years in Ukraine and the parts of it that were people talk about like coups and whatnot, but there's a lot of organic movement in order to join Europe and to join the West. And culturally, it is closer to Europe. And so culturally, there was a little bit more of just a mentality that like the other half of this that people don't realize is the mentality of like the Russian people is just so different in terms of like enabling a democratic system and a market system and like, people thought there'd be like capitalism in Russia and didn't realize that it became just everybody stealing whatever they could steal, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting to me to see the reaction on social media. And of course, I'm in a New York bubble. So like the reactions I'm seeing on people's like Instagram stories, for example, is not like how people on the whole feel in the country, but there seemed to be three camps. There was like the pro-Ukrainian side, and then sort of like, again, this like leftist side of like America bad, so whatever is against America is good.
Yeah.
So, and
I'll be honest, I didn't, with Ukraine specifically, I probably saw that end up rising more on the right than on the left.
yes.
Just because Putin's like the strongman leader and started using a lot of the terminology that kind of registered with a lot of the red pill crowd in terms of like family units, and it's stuff that's like not sincere at all. I mean, like the guy has a long history of like, telling George Bush that he's a Christian, like just ridiculous stuff that like appeals that Bush also kind of fell for at the time. But like, stuff that he has a decent awareness of like what's going to appeal culturally to certain elements in America.
I think something that the populist left and right share is like a sort of like almost isolationism based on nihilism, though. You know what I mean?
It's demoralization, I think is the term for it, and it's an explicit KGB multi-generational tactic to destroy the West.
Yeah, because it's interesting to me because people will be like, because isolationism to me is like just untenable. Like it just like we live in a like a global
we live
community.
in a society.
We live in a society, damn it. I remember listening to a podcast. I think it was when Shane Gillis was talking about Vietnam with what's his name? Who this is gonna bother me. Who's the fucking guy?
Joe Rogan?
No. But people are probably screaming at their phones.
Is it
right
someone
now.
who like would have been around for Vietnam?
No, but it's he was a kid during Vietnam. Hey Connor, can you Google Shane Gillis Vietnam guest? Thank you so much. It's Colin Quinn. Thank you.
Oh,
God damn it. I'm turning into an old man that can't remember comedians that I love.
yeah.
But
he's great.
During that podcast, Shane Gillis was talking about the domino theory, and he was like, kind of, because he fits into that. Like, I remember he Googled, like, we should give more money to Ukraine, like, as if it's just like a frivolous thing that we're doing for fun.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, I think he was kind of shitting on domino theory. And I still don't know how I feel about an intervention in Vietnam, but he was saying like, they were saying like, if Vietnam falls to communism, then Thailand and Cambodia and Laos will fall to communism. And it's like, who gives a shit? I'm like, I do. What the fuck, man?
Right.
I mean, there's like, you
just can't apply that logic of, not to shift subjects, but you mentioned like in terms of isolationism, I just think you can't apply something like that, like blanket. You have to look at the specifics of the situation, and obviously Vietnam didn't work out so hot, but I think it's a legitimate concern, like you said, in terms of like there's a power projection that you have to have, and that actually can keep you from entering wars, and sometimes having a war in one particular place can save lives, but I mean, it's cliche at this point to say it.
I think there's like, I get the sentiment, but I think there's nothing more useless than someone being like, war is bad.
Right.
I'm like, yes.
Well,
okay.
it's like what is it? That expression that like, what is that? Something times make strong men make good soft times, or I don't know. It's not soft. It's not good.
It's getting soft and hard.
Yeah.
A lot
good
of getting
times
soft and
make hard men.
Oh,
no, it's like
bad
strong
times make hard men.
Make good
hard,
strong men make good times. Good
got it.
times make weak men make bad times.
It's like if you love Jocko Willink, you love that quote.
Oh yeah. Well, it is a privilege to have that kind of idealism, and I do think like I was sort of like very atheist libertarian militantly in high school and like maybe early college.
Same.
Yeah, we have similar origin stories, and I became disillusioned with a lot of like kind of rigid ideology in that sense. I'm still atheist, I guess, but I'm much more like, I don't pick arguments with my college roommates anymore. But like also, where was my train of thought going here? Oh, well, for me, you know what actually popped me out of it was when New York banned smoking in bars. I was very like, I don't smoke. I've never smoked cigarettes, but I was so like, who is the government to tell people with their private business who can and can't smoke? And then it happened. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
This is so much better. And the amount of people that seems to plummet in smoking rates in a way that like 30 years of anti-smoking propaganda did not do nearly as effectively as just banning the shit in bars and restaurants. I don't know. It's very hard to line that up with a neat ideology because it's very hard to say that that's bad. It's good. It's obviously good. It's good they don't smoke in bars anymore.
I always describe myself because I'm sober. I would say I'm a millennial alcoholic, which means I don't smoke, and I've never smoked because that would mean leaving the bar. You know what I mean? I think you'd be very hard pressed to find a recovering alcoholic who's a boomer or Gen X who doesn't smoke because they were used to smoking at the bar.
Yeah. Well, that I guess there's some. I don't want to name the person, but I do know somebody. But they drink a lot of coffee. That's the flip side.
The coffee thing is big. Yeah. What a God, coffee or cigarettes? You got
that's one of the three. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's comedy, baby. And jacking off.
So God.
I think about God while I'm jacking off. So you come over to the US when you're 7?
Yeah, I turned 7 like right after we came here.
And so do you speak any English?
Did not speak any English.
Oh, that's so what was that like?
I had to go to a different elementary school that was further away because the one closest to us did not have ESL. And then I did ESL for, I think, first, second, maybe part of I think first and second. I think by 3rd grade I'd went to the closer elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it took like 2 years.
2 years, and like exposure at home and stuff like that, like watching American TV.
Yeah, it is kind of incredible. Like when you're young, how because anytime I talk to like children of immigrants, they're like, yeah, it took a little while and we're good. you know?
Yeah, once you're immersed and you're a kid and you kind of don't know that like it could be easier if this wasn't happening, you just go with the flow and it works. It's really hard when you're an adult.
Yeah, dude, I could imagine. And there has to be this sort of like, yeah, I guess when you're 7, you're young enough to be like, well, this is where I live now, and not maybe have the thought of like, this is fucking bullshit. That
Can we
have
go
to,
back?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure kids do say stuff like that. And for my parents, I'm sure my parents took some English classes, but funny enough, it was like British English.
Oh, yeah.
And so there'd be certain weird little picadillos that they'd have when they'd come over where they'd use a word they don't use here or like an odd pronunciation or
Boris,
something.
put on your trousers.
Yeah. Don't forget to bless the queen before we leave.
Spelling color with a U and all that.
Yeah.
All that silly stuff those folks do over there.
Yeah, goofballs.
Yeah. It's yeah, so that's interesting. So what is that experience like? And I'm sure there's like gaps in your memory because you're only 7.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but like you walk into it's an ESL classroom. Are there kids from like all over the world there? Is there a Ukrainian community?
I honestly don't remember that at all. I have like a few scattered distinct memories, mostly things that like probably scarred me at the time, but not a big deal now, but like very specific little things. Like I didn't know how to ask to go to the water fountain. I remember that. And so my parents gave me a bottle of water to bring to school, but they gave me the bottle of water that was like a baby bottle. It still had a nipple on it. And I didn't drink from the nipple. I unscrewed it. And I drank from it like a regular bottle, but obviously that was not something to reason with the other first and second graders. So I definitely got ripped on for that. And then there's this stuff that they use for like when you cut yourself in the Soviet Union called zelyonka. And it's like a type of like ethanol. I'm sure it's like some sort of isopropanol or whatever that is supposed to like kill the bacteria, but it's colored green for whatever reason, and it burns like hell. That's the only thing I remember is like you cut yourself, they put that shit on your wound, and it's like to tears. But when I'd have cuts, my parents would put it on me, and it would be green, and the kids would think I was an alien because I bled green blood. Because why else is there green around my wounds? And so that was something that stuck for sure.
Yeah, there's some little kid in the 90s thinking like the thing about Ukrainians is they have
green blood.
They have green blood and they love nipples for longer than is appropriate.
Oh, we're not all so different, are we?
Yeah, dude, I honestly love nipples too.
Yeah, for longer than is appropriate.
I wasn't breastfed though.
No?
Yeah. It's very funny that this has come up multiple times in the podcast.
Yeah. I was, and I have a whole bit about this because my mom breastfed me and her friend's baby who was not breastfed.
Dude, it's crazy how much comedy I hear because I believe you that I've heard you say that before, but
it's possible. I mean, it's a whole bit about my breast friend Michael.
So your mom was a wet nurse to this Michael fella?
Just to the one guy.
Just to the one guy.
She wasn't all around.
She wasn't
town.
going through all time.
Yeah.
Wait, so what's the story behind that?
That's really about it.
Okay, I'm not asking you to do your bit.
Yeah, I already felt weird saying that coffee cis milk joke. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't do the bits on the podcast or you get the Berbiglia treatment.
Oh, well, you know what's the worst is, and this is a new comic thing. Someone's new to comedy. You're having a conversation with them before either a show,
and they're working in their bit,
and it's like, okay,
and they think you can't tell is the crazy part.
Your cadence literally changes. I know what you're doing, bud.
And the reason why you can tell and it changes so much is because you don't have that comfort yet on stage where your natural cadence and your stage cadence have kind of merged a little bit to where you can flow between the two.
Yeah, dude, it's like, I don't know. That happened to me recently, and I was like, please don't do this.
Yeah, I punched
Let's just
her.
have a nice time.
I punched her.
Yeah, to me, it's interesting because, like in company of like non-comedians, my identity sort of is to be a silly boy. You know, to be silly. But there is a sort when you're around a bunch of comedians, it's almost like you should taper it back a little bit because you don't want to be known as the guy that's always on. Yeah, because we're all silly geese. You know what I mean?
Although there are some people that do that very well, I guess, and those people are usually manic. You just got to catch them when they're off. But yeah, otherwise, I feel like it gets exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a few people I could think of where it's like I don't know what they're actually like because it almost seems like they're doing a character
Right.
the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, if that's how you have to operate, that's how you have to operate.
And everybody's different. Some people are just genuinely like that, and it's fun and maybe a little exhausting after a while, but you kind of start to appreciate them.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people are really mentally ill and they need help.
Yeah, if you're always on and you do comedy in New York and everyone seems exhausted by your presence, consider getting help. So you moved to the U.S. and you're in ESL classes. Do you remember any sort of like culture shock as a child, or any culture shock that your parents experienced when they moved here?
I'm trying to think if anything pops up. I mean, I'm sure there are examples, but nothing's
The
popping up
baby
at the
bottle
moment.
thing was one of them for sure.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the thing is that like there's certain elements of culture that we didn't participate in for a long time because like when we first came here, my mom was working at like a painting like jewelry or some they were both, my parents were both engineers in the Soviet Union. Very cliche story. My dad eventually got a job, I think actually relatively early on, fixing like camcorders and VCRs and stuff like that back when you would fix stuff like that. And so like that was like a big break for them early on because it was like, you know, I don't know, at the time it must have been like 30 something grand a year or something, but that was like a decent amount of money for like having come here, not that equipped with anything else. And my mom eventually went to school at night. And so a lot of it was just like at the time we didn't go out, you know, like it was my grandparents watching me for the most part while my parents worked and went to school. And so I remember a big one was like my dad's boss, like however many years into being here, took us out to a restaurant for the first time. It was my first time ever at a restaurant, and he took us to McDonald's. But at the time it was awesome. I'd never been to McDonald's before. I still have like a weird fond memory of like the little plastic stirs with like the arches that I don't think they have anymore or whatever. But at the time that was a big deal. And there was that. And then eventually my parents sent me to karate, and it was a very funny moment. I went to karate at like a black community center. It's called Minnie Beville Community Center in New Jersey. And they had on the wall all these, this isn't really culture shock, but it was a funny thing for my parents to see. On the wall, they had photos of different like famous black people throughout history. And one of the people on the wall was Alexander Pushkin, who's a famous Russian poet, but his like grandfather on one side was a portion African-American, or a portion African? A portion black? I don't know. Definitely not African-American, but a portion African ancestry or something like that. And they found it funny because nobody in Russia thought of or like considered him black in any way.
Yeah.
Which actually, if you look at a photo, you could see it like a little bit features-wise or something there, but like never would they have considered it. And so to them, it was like, this is our guy.
Yeah.
Why you got our guy on your wall?
Yeah. And then, you know, I'm sure there's a Russian person being like, he's not black.
I'm sure there's a lot of them. Yeah.
He can't be. It's impossible.
Please, no.
Yeah.
Wake me up.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So, so you learn English like pretty quickly, and then, you go through school. What was high school like? What was your thing? Did you play sports? Were you an
Not
art
play
guy?
sports. I think I was very similar when I mentioned certain rigid ideologies. I thought sports and anything athletic was for stupid people.
Yes. Yeah. I've been. The listeners know I've also felt that way.
Big error on my part. I've since like I try to work out. I think it's important, and I did not do any of that until much later in life. I actually had a moment. So this girl I dated in high school, I invited to a party my freshman year, maybe I think it was my freshman year in college. She was a year younger than me. So she was a senior in high school and I was a freshman in college, and I invited her to a party, and I was walking in a wife beater with her, and someone from a frat house yelled like, "Damn, man, you little as hell." And it really stuck with me. And I started working out pretty much after that moment.
That was your fucking this changes now moment.
Yeah, it really was. But I did not do any kind of athletic anything in high school. I played guitar in a band with some friends, and then eventually had to choose between joining band and doing theater, and I did theater. and there was an improv group in my high school, a short form improv group. So I did theater and short form improv, and
Okay.
played guitar in a band.
I also play guitar in a band. That's crazy.
Look at that. We got parallel lives here.
We really do, dude. Except my parents are not engineers, and they're not from the Soviet Union.
Okay. Well, can't all be perfect.
Yeah, we can't all be perfect. No, that's yeah. The thinking that you're too smart to take care of your body.
It's crazy.
Well, it's a defense mechanism, I think, because I think like very early on, I learned like junior high. I'm like, I have a small frame. This is probably like doctor told me when I was 15. They're like, this is as tall as you're gonna get. You know what I mean? And I'm like, instead of struggling in an area in my mind that I was never gonna excel at, and also this is like integrated with teenage angst where I'm just like, fuck those like dumb jocks. I'm an intellectual and I'm interested in art and music, and it's like, it's so fucking stupid, dude, because there were probably like, I'm thinking of the guy that yelled at you, man, you little as hell. I'm sure almost everyone in his life system was like, that guy's a douchebag. You know what I mean?
Right.
It wasn't the jocks versus us. It was like a few mean football players, and that's it.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a art timeline age-wise, or it's a world timeline age-wise, in the sense that I'm sure this was always the case, but I wonder if culturally, I see a lot more now of like people who are like just straight up nerds for fitness and the gym and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's probably a social media thing too. But you see a lot more guys like that are like, oh, this guy's like very bright and also is just focused all his intelligence on like geeking out over workout shit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was always the case, and it was just people that I never spoke to. And I wonder how those guys related to the actual troglodytes in the gym. You know what I mean? Like the guys that are like actually geeking out over it versus the guys that are just there so they could like get drunk and fuck somebody that weekend.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can be both. You could be a smart muscle man who fucks women on the weekends, I imagine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you could also be, have disdain and think the gym is for idiots while also being a moron yourself still.
Yeah, the quintessential, oh, are you guys watching sports ball? Like those guys, it's like, well, why don't you tell me something profound then? And they're like, I think
what
anime
are you
is
interested
cool.
in? Yeah.
You know. Cool. So you have a younger brother.
I got a younger brother.
And is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right, cool. And so he was born in America, wasn't he?
No.
Oh,
so like I said, my mom became pregnant with him and wanted to wait and have him in Ukraine before we came over.
Okay.
Just because she felt more comfortable and safer. So yeah, he was born in 1990, and then we came over in 1991.
Oh, hell yeah. I was born in 1990.
Oh,
He's a
yeah.
90s king, dude.
There you go.
That rules. So, now you had a kid.
Now I had
That's
a kid.
very exciting. We teased that at the beginning of the episode, but you have a baby boy.
I got a baby girl.
It's baby girl, folks.
I mean, we'll see, but yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty problematic that you gendered your baby, because like your baby's not old enough to like consent what gender they are yet.
That's right.
Yeah. So what's it like being a dad?
It's fun. I like it a lot. I think, there's the cliche stuff. I don't think it's as like, I'm not going to say not as profound, but not as profound in terms of like pace of life type stuff. It obviously is like, makes it, a little more exhausting in terms of doing comedy and certain things like that. But like the people that are, I feel like really are like freaking out and are like, you don't understand what it's like, man. Those people were fucking on edge before they ever had a kid. And this is just the new conduit through which they like, no, you don't get it, man,
Yeah.
And so for the most part, like other parents I relate to with this as well, that are like have been chill, normal people that figure out ways to organize their life and balance things. They do that with a baby, and it's usually not like a wrench in the works that, it's often the opposite of people who have fucked up lives and are like, a baby will fix this. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
But, the one thing that I will say is I love having a baby. I'm an advocate for having babies, but having had a baby, the people that I know that say that they don't want one, I am now much less likely to try to tell them to reconsider. Because it is one of those things where, like, if you don't think you want one, then like until you're ready for it, like you should not. Nobody should be trying to convince you.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you listening, Mom? If my mom is listening to this episode, don't pressure people in general
Yeah.
to have a baby if they're not ready yet.
Yeah. Well, there's steps
Mm-hmm.
that lead to there. But people who gotta have babies. Somebody's. I think that's also the flip side of like politically and culturally things like that is like. It's just this foregone conclusion that like the rest of society is going to take care of you when you're old. And, that's not always the case. And if it is the case, it's not always the best. And for many, many millennia, the way that happens is when you get old, people younger around you take care of you. And so there is kind of a, sociological aspect to why I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, 100%. We don't want to go through what Japan is going through now.
No.
Where it's like literally like
where a Ukrainian woman just won Mrs. Japan like yesterday or 2 days ago.
You're going to have to explain more.
She came to Japan when she was like 6 and considers herself Japanese, but I'm taking her back for us. No, but yeah, she won Mrs. Japan.
Mrs. Japan. Oh, so like, is it like Miss America?
Yeah, it's like a beauty pageant or whatever.
Oh, dude.
They're just not that into Asians, I think, maybe.
That's dude, I bet you there are Japanese people upset about that.
Yeah, I'm sure, because they're more so, America is, as much as we criticize ourselves next to Japan, we're a, melting pot that welcomes other people and they become Japan to their own detriment.
They're not a melting walk at all.
No, not even close. Not a melting walk. Good one.
You just get up and leave.
A good friend of mine, actually, his wife's Japanese and they go every year. And I was talking to him about this article and he's like, yeah, no, it's not like that at all. It's very Japanese. It's still, despite the fact that they're demographically collapsing, they still are fighting, any sort of change in terms of people being able to easily become Japanese citizens and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a weird one. Because
And now Ukrainians are winning their beauty pageants.
Hell yeah, dude. I bet she is beautiful.
I'm sure she's pretty. Yeah.
You know what? In support of the Ukrainian people, especially those living in other countries,
Yeah,
I'm
we
going to
needed
jack off
this.
to her later.
We need.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I've never been to Japan. Never been to Ukraine. Probably not going to go anytime soon.
No, probably not. Although once the shit goes, good place to invest.
Yeah. Now, if knock on wood, like peace is ever established in Ukraine, do you have any like desire to go back and visit?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
We were supposed to. We had like 3 trips that got canceled, like during different conflicts and stuff. Well, I went. I visited since I left.
Okay.
So in fact, a lot of my memory, I feel like, of my home city is not actually my memory from when I was little there, but like sort of my newer memory, sort of reminding me of my older memory type of deal. But yeah, the city where I'm from is a beautiful city. It has not been destroyed. It has survived many other conflicts where like it's such a historic port city with like, there's like a famous opera house there, the Potemkin Steps there, and just a lot of like different things that are valuable culturally, not just to Ukrainians, but to a lot of people in the region. And so there's been like where in previous conflicts and wars and stuff where like Russian troops refused to attack that city. Now, during this one, there have been like missiles flying overhead and kind of stuff, but it's been largely left alone. And so, hopefully, knock on wood, that continues to be the case. But yeah, I have more of an affinity for my city than I do for the country because I just haven't seen the majority of the rest of the country. And we left for a reason. I didn't quite have an affinity for the country since we left. But it's formed a national identity that's gotten stronger since. And I really would love to take my wife and my daughter to see that city for sure.
And yeah, is your wife Ukrainian?
No, my wife is from upstate New York.
Oh, as am I.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, the 2 most important people in your life from upstate New York.
You're almost a combination of me and my wife.
Ooh, dude, this is getting.
Are you my daughter?
Dude, I don't know. So okay, I know we talked about off mic because the premise of this podcast is to ask people about their morning routine.
Yeah, I was wondering when that was coming.
It comes up. Sometimes I get so engrossed in the conversation that it never comes up.
Yeah.
But I'm getting better about making myself at least halfway through asking it. But I want to ask it because off mic you said it is very much informed by the fact that you're a father.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Well, it means I sort of have no choice at this point. And like, I work from home now for the most part. I don't have a reason to necessarily wake up as early as I do, but I have to wake up when my daughter wakes up. Sometimes when I have a late night and my wife knows that I came home late from a show or something like that, she's great like that and will handle things for a little bit in the morning. But I don't want to and wouldn't make her do that all the time. So my daughter wakes up not that early for a baby and a toddler. She's pretty good. She usually wakes up now sometime between like 6:30 and 7. It used to be like 5:30 at a certain time period, and we would just have to, the first couple months are really brutal because she actually came a few weeks early, and so she was very small, and you had to like make sure to feed her every 2 because their stomachs are tiny, so they can't, eat enough to sustain themselves unless they eat every 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a bodybuilder. Yeah, she's building her body.
She's not on test, is she?
Yeah, son, gotta figure out that gender.
Your baby's got to be natty, dude. Come on.
Dude, she's getting yoked. But so at that point, every 2 to 3 hours, 24/7 for the first couple months. So that was really like, obviously more difficult for my wife than myself, but like both of us, for the most part, were taking turns and making sure every 2 to 3 hours she had to be fed, and that means somebody has to be awake every 2 to 3 hours. Now she sleeps pretty good. She sleeps like 6:45 to 6:45, essentially.
Ooh.
Yeah, basically 12 hours. And so my morning routine is usually I'm the one that takes her to daycare in the morning. So she gets dropped off at daycare at 8:30. So wake up sometime between 6:30 and 7, maybe 7:15 some days. And first thing, she eats 3 scrambled eggs almost every morning. So I make her 3 scrambled eggs. Usually she'll have actually like an apple or a banana after that. It's pretty good, solid breakfast. And then 8:30, I drop her off at daycare, and I usually try to either go to the gym right then or do like a walk for like 45 minutes or something, and then I head home.
What's the gym like for you?
Right now I've been going to Blink. I don't love it.
Blink is like you get to tell yourself you're not at Planet Fitness.
Yeah, pretty much. And man, that Blink has had some issues. They had a straight up septic leak. Like between the 2 bench presses, they had a leak of what was obviously like sewage water. This was not a regular water leak. It smelled like shit. They've had it just sucks. There's just a wait. I wait like 10, 15 minutes minimum usually for a bench or a squat rack or something like that. I don't love it. I'm looking forward to switching one day in the future. Or I do a walk for like 45 minutes or something like that.
Ooh, I love walking.
Me too.
For walking, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's probably my favorite physical activity, but it takes time. It's actually why I have a city bike membership, because I like walking places, but if I'm running late to a show or something, I make sure to have the city bike membership, and then I can hop on a bike and catch up if I need to.
Terrified of riding a bike in New York City. I don't think I'd ever do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a valid fear. It's safer on a city bike than almost anything else because they're so heavy. You can't like zip between cars the way you would on other things. And if you get hit, if you're in a heavier object, you get thrown a little bit less, I think.
We'll have to get one of your engineer parents on the podcast to confirm that.
Yeah. I've been biking in the city for a long time, so I'm not really bothered by it. And I've never had an issue. I'm a very defensive bicyclist.
You're not like some bicyclists in New York that have a death wish, it seems.
No. And you know what? I have a good handful of friends that have had like serious injuries, and almost all of them ride in that way. It's not, I'm not saying it's always your fault. Certainly not. But like a lot of my friends that have had like, a broken bone or whatever else, I watch them ride, and they're legitimately like, you get doored or something that blows, and it's somebody, there's not a lot you can do about it if you're zipping right next to cars that are parked on the side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have to keep a lookout for any lights or anything like that, but also just like make sure there's always distance. Don't be going crazy fast in those kinds of areas, you know?
Yeah. There's this weird thing where it's like, there's a certain type of person. Like I got introduced to a subreddit called Fuck Cars. And I think a lot of people on bicycles in New York that ride the way I would describe it is recklessly.
Yeah.
It's sort of this like
Militant.
yeah,
attitude,
it's almost like I'm being an environmentalist right now by how much I don't look out for cars.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to people like that. So there's like obvious extreme versions of that, of people that just don't even put two and two together, that like, how does your produce get here? Like just things like that. But on bikes, you know, it's funny because I drive also, and I walk, obviously. And I do think more so there's like sometimes in people who drive are like fuck pedestrians, and among pedestrians are like fuck cars. And then bicycles sometimes for me is the happy medium where I'm just kind of like, wee.
So I will say, I have probably almost been hit by a car since I've lived in New York for 7 years, I think.
Yeah.
I think I've almost been hit by a car, I want to say a handful of times, like where I had to get out of the way or they had to slam on their brakes. I almost get hit by a bicycle every day.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what?
I know where my allegiance lies.
Well, it's funny because New York, you know, and I'm all in favor of setting up infrastructure that does make it safer to bike here. But you look at a city like Amsterdam or something where it's like a huge bike culture, you know, like it's just like massive, the amount of people riding bicycles. And you'll almost get hit there a ton.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to them, that's their cars essentially. And so they're like, they got the bike lanes, they're zipping through the bike lanes, and like, yeah, you better fucking look out when you're walking around near those things.
Which, fair enough. I mean, if you're a pedestrian standing in the bike lane, you're being an asshole.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Of course.
I'm a big advocate of being a good pedestrian.
Or being a good everything. That's the thing people don't realize is that like neither form of transportation automatically makes you not an asshole.
Right.
Let alone an asshole.
Yeah, it seems... Well, honestly, I think like, okay, so a big pet peeve of mine is when bicyclists run the red light, but I have never seen a police officer in New York or anywhere pull over a bicyclist. So I think it's more of just like incentives. Like if you're in a car, I've seen people get pulled over for running a red light in a car.
Yeah.
So I think to some extent, it's just like human nature. Like, can I get away with this?
Yeah. And also again, like I've run red lights on my bike. I've done it in situations where I feel like I have good visibility and I can clearly see that, you know, I'm just riding through. I've also, you know, walked across the crosswalk like almost all New Yorkers do, you know, unlike, no, you'll stop.
Dude, I get constantly teased for it, and perhaps
Are you
rightfully
German?
so.
That is a German thing.
Germans have some good ideas. Do not take that out of context. But yeah, I don't, because to me it's like, all right, like if I'm in a hurry, I've done it. You know what I mean?
But otherwise you will literally wait if there's no cars at all.
Well, and it's twofold.
Like a fucking tourist.
Well, okay. So I think because some people jaywalk like dangerously.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's because of this, there's like this, like you don't want to, I think people that move to New York or even people that are visiting New York don't want to, quote, look like tourists, right? They don't want to look like a rube.
Right, but
You
they
know what
are
I mean?
rubes, so they're just like fucking playing Frogger.
Dude, and to me, okay, so two reasons I try not to jaywalk. One is, for the most part, I'm not in a rush. You know what I mean? I'm not this business go guy. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm privileged to not have a baby. Maybe I'd feel differently if I had a baby. But to me, it's like, you ever catch yourself rushing and you're like, I don't have to rush.
Right.
Like it's almost like it's like this neurosis thing of like, you can't stand still now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, there's that Louis quote, you should act in a way if everybody acted that way, things would work out.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm like, well, if I get annoyed at the bicyclist for running a red light, then I guess I also shouldn't run the red light as a pedestrian, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective to have. But again, like, you can't really always follow a rigid set of rules. But yeah, if I see no one's there, I'm going to cross the street, obviously. But I do like your perspective, and I try to do the same as putting myself in a position where I'm not rushing. I think that is important because I think like being late somewhere and being in a hurry, it's very easy to just start justifying being an asshole through, you know, just honking at people when there's no reason to honk or like, you know, doing whatever, or you can't help somebody if there's a situation where somebody might need a quick hand, like holding a door or whatever else. Like it puts you in up for success in terms of being a decent person, leaving a little earlier.
I think the phenomenon of like people beeping like right when the light changes green.
I had that guy yesterday twice.
Someone,
I was so pissed off. He beeped at me twice in a row. And then the third light, I was like just watching him ready. I'm like, if you fucking beep at me, I'm not moving right. And then he didn't. So I started going.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. A war.
It was like an old guy in a car too. I was like, where are you rushing to?
Yeah, dude. Oh, when someone's doing it and you look at them and you're like, I could actually beat you up.
Yeah,
so
it's game on now. You're one of the few people in the city that I can take physically because you're 75.
Yeah, it's I always that whole like there's a certain type of person, and there's more of them in New York, that they're constantly like like if the train stops for a second and you could see somebody's body physically move, like it's like, dude, you should have left the house earlier.
Yeah.
Like I know, like who knows? People live their lives. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, anything's possible.
But a lot of the times it's like, dude, you were sitting on your bed staring at your phone until the last possible time. Like you calculated when's the latest I could leave my warm bed to get to my appointment. Well, maybe if you had left 15 minutes earlier, you would be less neurotic.
Yeah, and then when you show up somewhere, you have like 15 different legitimate excuses for why you're late, but it's because you time things in such a way that if anything at all goes wrong, which predictably in a New York City commute it will.
And I think like I've had former coworkers, like people that I work with, that are like constantly late, and it's like I almost can't even hide on my face. Like they'll be like, the train. I'm like, I took the train here too, but you're constantly late. This isn't a train problem. This is a you problem.
Yep.
And that's what I would say to them. And I was the most popular person in the office. It's this. There's this. Some people I think frame I'm always late as like as if it's like a character
thing that happens to them,
right? Like it's like, oh, I'm an introvert versus extrovert. Right. Like, oh, I'm a person that's late. It's like that's actually a character flaw.
You could actually do things. You could actually take steps to improve that. Yeah, for sure. I will say, back on the subject of morning person, I used to be really a morning person. Like when I was a kid, I was like the kid on the bus in the morning, like fucking doing goofy raps or something, like annoying everybody else who was half asleep. And then I started smoking weed.
Oh, and that
has shifted things, and I still do, and I take breaks, and I notice a major. That's probably the most major thing, because I'm a very functional weed smoker, and I also smoke to different degrees depending on different phases of my life and stuff. And for the most part, I'm able to function very well. I'm able to be really productive. I'm able to be relatively social most of the time. It doesn't really especially if I'm already in a social environment. But in the morning is where I feel it. I notice a big difference especially when I like really take a break and stop for like a month or something. My mornings are like much more sharp.
Interesting. So you'll take a whole month to is it to do a reset?
Yeah, I'll do a month that I reset, because otherwise it's very easy to get kind of back into the habit if I just take a few breaks here and there. Yeah, I don't drink a ton. I don't indulge in too many things these days, but I do still like to smoke weed.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. Anything in moderation, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a system where you're like, all right, honey, watch the baby today because I'm getting high?
Oh, no, I'm perfectly fine around the baby if I'm smoking. I don't smoke before I work out, generally speaking. If I'm like lifting weights, I don't smoke before lifting weights. I don't smoke if I'm doing comedy or doing a podcast or something like that. I used to. There was a couple of years there where I was like getting high before every show, and like once in a while it would be like so fun. I would have some show where I was like, oh, that was great, blah blah blah, and then once in a while it would just be this fucking awkward moment where I was like, that would have never happened if I wasn't stoned. Where it was just a bizarre misreading of wavelengths and energies and communication that's happening there. Where I was like, yeah, if I'm gonna take myself seriously in terms of pursuing this, I can't be smoking before doing shows.
See, I'm fascinated by people that perform either drunk or high, because I quit everything before I did stand up. So I only know
stand up as a sober person.
As a sober person. So like, to me, especially weed, because when I would smoke, it'd be like just the stereotypical, like, practice what you're going to say to the bodega guy, So
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
imagine going up in front of a bunch of people for, however long and be funny. You know?
I still think I could do it again, just because have so much of experience being in various uncomfortable situations, and not just weed, in like college and other time periods. I've done like, shrooms and acid and stuff like that, where I've interacted publicly with it, where not that I can take acid and have any sort of interaction where someone won't think I'm an acid. That's something that people tell themselves, that generally speaking, if it's someone that knows what someone on acid looks like, something's going on there. It's not that easy to hide. But I've had enough of an experience where I feel like with most of those things, I could just fucking psych myself up and do what needs to be done with a lot of stuff like that. Particularly with weed. I don't have any problem, I think, doing anything specifically, but as a matter of habits, I know it's better not to do certain things.
So if people want to see you perform high or sober, how can they do so?
Well, they can probably just check out my Instagram, where I'll post shows, seeing that this won't be coming out until after most stuff that I have booked right now, since we're doing this a little bit in advance. But go to @the_Boris_K on Instagram, or Boris Khaykin, spelled, oh God, I think actually I still have the Boris K or Boris Comedy as a website. Go to my Instagram.
Guys, and worst case scenario, you could DM me, how do I find Boris? And I'll tell you.
Yeah, do that. DM Bobby, hit on him, get what other info you need from him, and then he'll tell you where my shows are.
Hell yeah, dude. And remember, folks, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Is that how you close every show?
I'm just playing Night Owls. You know I love you.
Thank you.